Oh yeah, I did. We didn't do that one because we did the readout thing. So yes, Cam and Julie, each of you, and I don't, whichever way you can go first. Each tell a story about the worst/scariest time in the lab.
Mine's fairly recent.
I will need to think about mine for a moment. So why don't you go first if you've got one?
Yeah. No. You know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this was fairly real. I guess it's been a few weeks now. This was like a month ago. So I've recently taken over a job as a kind of just like a lab assistant job, conveniently enough in the same lab that I'm also doing my honors research in, which is handy. And so for my job, it's actually more chemistry than bio. I help mix. We do a lot of. We're right now we're working with a kind of a citizen science project to help monitor various parameters of water quality from seawater on the island. So for these for the tests that we run, there's a few different chemical reactions that we have to do, and one of my jobs is to mix up the reagents for the. Oh, can people hear me? It looks like I'm quiet.
Would you like to use this?
Is that overkill?
You are totally allowed to use this if you want.
All right.
Because that's the kind of shift this is.
Can you hear me now? Are we good? Are we good?
Just when you're sitting down there, you're both below the mics that are pointed out and farthest away from the mics that are above you. So if you got a mic there, then you're set.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of my jobs is to mix up a lot of the reagents for these reactions, and one of these reagents is a 50% sulfuric acid solution, which I prepare myself from 90. Well, it's about 97 to 99% sulfuric acid concentrated, not a solution, just straight up sulfuric acid. So, which is fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. So the thing about concentrated sulfuric acid is when it hits water, it's such an exothermic reaction that it just boils immediately, which is pretty intense. I'm very, very careful, which is why I'm here talking to you now, because so a few weeks ago I went to mix this up, and I was only, thankfully again, working with small volumes. I was only making about 500 milliliters. So yeah, no, it's not a water to acid story. I know because of a much worse horror story my supervisor told me. I always add acid to water, never water to acid. But no, so I'd made up the solution. I'd added acid to water, like you're supposed to, in a glass volumetric flask, like we do. And then it came time to transfer this now only 50% sulfuric acid solution from the glass volumetric flask to the very thick-walled glass bottle, which is what we always store it in. We
How big is this bottle you're putting it in?
Well, it was only, like I said, I made it was a 500 milliliter flask, so like the
smaller
size.
than a bread box.
And so it's going into not like a carboy, it's going into a reasonable size storage.
Like a regular
Like a bottle
Yeah.
of Coke.
Yeah.
Nice size.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. This is we always store them in these glass bottles. Everything's fine. It's totally fine. And there was still I'd given it a little bit of time to cool. So it's it was still warm, but not at least I could pick it up with gloves. It wasn't scalding. And the bottle, everything was room temperature. The bottle wasn't cold or anything. Everything seemed totally fine.
Where were you pouring this? Because I don't think you mentioned that yet.
Behind a fume hood with the glass pulled all the way down with just enough room for my wrists to maneuver, which again is what you should do when you're mixing acids. So yeah, I start pouring. I've got my flask. I've got my bottle. I start pouring the acid from the flask into the bottle, and it goes down into the bottle, And then it keeps going past the bottom of the bottle because the bottom of the bottle then just blew out. It's spilling 50% sulfuric acid all over the fume hood, which thankfully was closed, and I was working carefully enough, and I had gloves on and was wearing lab coat, and so I did not get a single drop on me. It was just, I believe my words were Jesus bus, and then I got my supervisor and everything was fine. We had to then spend like an hour running around trying to find all the proper spill containment crap, and it added like 2 hours to my day, and it was a nightmare. But
so the thing about this, because when you told me this too, two things got me. One was you said you poured it into the storage container, and you said it blew out.
Yeah.
But it didn't explode out.
No.
It just
like
came off.
Like the bottom.
Yeah, the bottom, like it was like looking down at the wreckage. I mean, there were like only 3 kind of pieces of glass. One was the bottom of the bottle in this perfect disc. One was pretty much the rest of the bottle, and then there were maybe like 1 or 2 largish chunks, kind of.
It's so weird.
Where it,
Yeah, well, I guess.
Those are
Yeah.
form forward, aren't they? Usually.
I don't know. It might have been like we have a scientific glass blower at UVic, one of the only ones in Canada. So it may have been a bottle that was repaired before, like broken and repaired before. But
that's
he's
possible.
really good at his job, right? That doesn't seem like the kind of thing that would just happen. So
That's why it was a clean break.
So then the second thing you told me is because for what I remember, and this really stuck with me, you said Jesus bus, and then took a step backwards. You didn't leap, you didn't panic, you knew that you
no, because if I had leapt, I would have gone right into one of the 7 or 8 like 6 foot tall tankards of compressed nitrogen gas right behind the fume hood.
Why are they there?
Because we need them for the mass spec.
yeah,
I'm just kind of imagining like you like just pulling your hands out of the fume hood, just like pushing the glass down and being like, and no.
Yeah, that was basically yeah.
it just impressed upon me that's like when this thing happened, you were like, step back, and I was just like, I would not have the presence of mind to do that because I don't work in a lab, right? I would have been like, "Wah!" Like it would have been awful. But,
Yeah, that's why all throughout a science degree, every semester when you start a course that has a lab component, you are subjected to the same 20-30 minute lab safety video. And now I know that's valuable.
There's a reason we watch that.
Yeah. You react calmly. You use safe practices to begin with. You quickly contain as best as you can, and then you find your lab supervisor and get it dealt with. I did see somebody in the chat saying, oh, you just, why was it so much effort to neutralize it? That's just first year stuff. This was really highly, you don't use, I don't think you use 50 to 90% concentrated sulfuric acid in a first year chem lab.
no,
No, the way we neutralized it was, we have absorbent pads that will soak up every single drop of anything. So the protocol is to just soak up all the liquid, and wait for it. We had to run around because we had the safety little all the little safety handouts and info bits we had around the lab were actually 10 years out of date. So I had to go through 3 different buildings just to find the closet that had the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had to contact the hazmat team in the building to come and pick it up in this scary bucket full of acid cloth, and it was fine. But yeah, the bonus was that fume hood probably hadn't been cleaned that thoroughly in years. So everything, once we took the spill pads out, everything just came right up with it. It was great. It's so shiny and clean. It's new.
yeah.
Upside.
Yeah, bright sides. Oh my god.
Yeah, it was fine. It was totally fine.
Hey Beach, this is your 3.5 hour reminder.
Thank you. Yes, my interview is at 9. I am leaving here at 7. And that means, Cameron, do you have a story?
I do actually. The story that I was involved in isn't dangerous so much as it is just Heartbreaking, I guess. Not heartbreaking, but like it was one of those like you could not have timed this event more perfectly. So I was in the analytical lab, and there was drama going on behind the scenes. The senior lab instructor was in the lab that day, along with my lab instructor, and they were having a conversation about how basically they were off to one side, but talking loudly enough that everyone could hear them about how the department was going through some budget cuts, and they just needed to be careful and make sure the students were being careful with the stuff they had and try not to waste too much stuff because we can't really afford to replace everything if things get broken. And while this is happening, one of the undergrads who's listening to this conversation is pulling out we keep the volumetric flasks just in like these Rubbermaids on in the cupboard, and he's pulling out the Rubbermaid and listening to this conversation and just keeps pulling it out as he's listening to the conversation, pulls it out too far, and it just falls off the cupboard floor, and like 20 vol flasks just roll out in various pieces of complete disintegration. Right? And these things are not cheap at all. And the senior lab instructor just she just stares at it and is like, yeah, it's about right. What do? You just watch one of your undergrads trash like $1,000 in glassware.
Oh my goodness.
So it was perfect, right? That was perfect. The story that didn't happen to me, that is actually a scary lab story, was a friend of mine who was working in a synthetic lab one day, took his round bottom flask with his product in it and took it over to the rotovap, which, if you're not familiar with a rotovap is a machine that you put a round bottom flask on that is used to drive off solvents. So what it does is it puts it under pressure and then lowers it into a warm water bath, and it boils away the solvents, and because it's under like a vacuum or a light vacuum, it just boils everything off really quickly. Like if it's ether, it's gone. If it's any kind of like organic solvent, it'll go away pretty quickly. It's a really handy device. So he takes the round bottom flask, slides it on, twists it because it's a ground glass thing, and what he didn't know was that at some point during his synthesis, a nitrated compound had formed on the ground glass joint, and by grinding it against the other ground glass joint, it detonated and blew out the rotovap was gone. The window and the wall that he was working out like next to were badly damaged, and the surgeons were able to save his hand.
Oh, good.
So that was good.
Was that the lab facing kind of that was
The
in
quad?
Elliott facing the kind of almost facing like the where there's like the walkway kind of through that cuts kind of past the quad and then goes up to
the
like
little
catch
wooded
and
area.
Yeah.
That was the window
that
on the
was
third.
tarped over for like a year.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. He elected not to finish his degree. He was an honor student, but he was like, no, I'm done.
I hear good things about sales.
Yeah.
No, the only stories that scare me more than than chemistry stories and the army stories, but not by much.
Yeah.